Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your sources and find the fascinating insights hidden within. Today, we're doing a deep dive into the history, traditions, and legends of one really remarkable Scottish family, Clan Leslie.
And this journey, it's guided by a very special source, Clan Leslie. It's actually the fifth book in the Ancient Clans of Scotland series, compiled by BagtownClans.com.
That's right, Rigby Publishing put it out, and believe me, it is absolutely packed with detail. Our mission today is, well, to unpack this incredible resource. We want to pull out the most compelling pieces, the really interesting stuff, and help you understand what makes Clan Leslie's story such a rich tapestry of loyalty, adaptability, and, frankly, resilience across centuries.
Yeah, think of this as your shortcut, your personal guided tour to understanding this ancient clan. We're talking from their almost legendary beginnings right through to their global presence today. It's 9 centuries of history we're navigating.
So let's jump right in and discover the heart of Clan Leslie. Okay, before we dive specifically into the Leslies themselves, the book does a great job setting the scene, explaining the Scottish clan system. And it makes it clear, this wasn't just about blood relatives, was it?
Not at all. I mean, the word clan literally means children, but the system really extended that idea of kinship, you know? People joined for protection, for loyalty, yeah, for belonging in what could be a pretty uncertain world back then.
So, kind of for survival.
Largely, yes, survival and mutual support. And in return, you were absolutely expected to uphold the clan's honor, contribute to its success. It was definitely a two-way street.
Right. And that bond, it really centered around the chief. The book describes the chief as, well, both the symbolic head and the practical leader.
Exactly. Chosen not just for lineage, though that was important, but often for capability, too. And below the chief, you had this whole layered structure. You had chieftains for the different branches, taxmen managing the land and the people on it, bards keeping the history and stories alive, and, of course, warriors ready to defend the clan.
Yeah. What's striking, though, reading this source, is how early the Leslies seemed to step onto a bigger stage. It points out they were known for powerful leadership, yeah, but also close ties to the crown. They produced not just local figures, but commanders, bishops, diplomats, people operating internationally.
That's a really key point. They weren't just confined to one area. Their identity was shaped not just by these roles, but by visible symbols. The crest, the motto, and later the tartan became important too. And that Leslie motto, grip fast, which is tied to this foundational legend we're definitely going to get into, it really encapsulates what the book suggests are their core values. Loyalty, courage, holding firm.
The book also gives a feel for everyday clan life. Very community-focused farming, crafting, herding. Kids learned by doing, seems like. Evenings were for stories, music. Sounds like a hard life, maybe, but with incredibly strong social bonds.
Yeah, and for the Leslies, this grounded local life was always kind of interwoven with this proud tradition of service, this broader perspective, and I think that explains a lot about their whole story, including how they spread globally later on.
Okay, origins. Let's get into it, because this is where that grip fast story really starts. The legend, according to the source, traces the Leslies all the way back to Bartolf. He was a Hungarian nobleman.
That's the story, yeah. Arrived in Scotland in 1067 with Princess Margaret, who later became Queen Margaret.
Right, and the grip-fast moment, Bartolf saved her crossing a river.
Supposedly, yes. During a difficult crossing, she was maybe slipping, and he grabbed onto something. Some versions say her saddle strap, others maybe a branch on the bank, and yelled, "Grip fast!" to hold on.
And King Malcolm III, her husband, was so grateful, he gave him lands and made him governor of Edinburgh Castle. Wow. That's quite the welcome package.
It certainly is a pretty significant start in a new country. And the name Leslie itself comes from the lands he was granted in Aberdeenshire, Leslie. The book mentions a couple of theories about what Leslie means, maybe Garden of Holly or perhaps Grey Fort. Interesting possibilities.
What I found fascinating reading this section was just how quickly they seemed to adapt. I mean, despite being newcomers, foreigners really, they integrated pretty seamlessly into both the Scottish feudal system and the existing Celtic structures. And they rose through royal favor and, as you mentioned, strategic marriages.
Yeah, you see them becoming part of the royal network quite fast. There's a Malcolm de Leslie in records by the 12th century. And later, another Leslie gets a royal charter for the barony of Leslie from King William the Lion himself.
So by the 13th century, they were really established. And during the Wars of Independence, they definitely chose a side, didn't they?
Oh, clearly. Sir Norman Leslie backed Robert the Bruce, fought at Bannockburn, and his son, Sir Andrew Leslie, was actually one of the signatories of the Declaration of Arbroath in 1320. That's a huge deal in Scottish history.
It absolutely is. And that same Sir Andrew, he secured the crucial Ballinbrake barony in Fife through his marriage to Mary Abernethy. That sounds like smart planning, not just military power.
Exactly. It highlights how clever alliances were just as important as strength in arms for building up their power base over time.
And their influence just kept growing.
Mm.
Malcolm de Leslie is cited as the first sort of recognized chief. Then the Rothes branch, founded by George Leslie, became incredibly prominent. He was made Lord Leslie, and then his son became the first Earl of Rothes in 1457.
Right, which elevated them straight into the Scottish peerage, made them a major national force. The early earls were serving in top councils, leading troops in battle. It's quite a rise. And their ability, it seems, to navigate both Highland and Lowland politics, to adopt Norman customs while being based in more Gaelic areas, and maintain ties with both local chiefs and the royal court. That adaptability was fundamental. It helped them survive and grow through some incredibly turbulent centuries.
So if we zoom out from those origins, what this section in the book really tells us is that Clan Leslie wasn't just another regional power player. Right from the start, they were strategically plugged into the highest levels of Scottish power. Known for loyalty, sure, but also ambition, and that core Leslie characteristic. The ability to endure, to grip fast.
Yeah, absolutely. And building on that, the book then goes into detail about how the clan actually functioned internally. It paints a picture of a really detailed structure designed to manage land, people, military readiness, everything.
The chief was at the top, of course, often the Earl of Rothes later on, but it sounds like everyone had a pretty defined role beneath them.
That's right. You had chieftains leading the various cadet branches, families that branched off from the main line, like the Leslies of Belcoon or Warhill, very important figures. There was even the concept of a Tanis, a sort of designated heir, often chosen for merit as much as bloodline, which is quite fascinating in itself.
And crucial for managing their lands, which were quite spread out, were the taxmen. The book describes them as sort of agents for the chief.
Exactly. They leased land from the chief, collected rents from the tenants below them, and critically, they were responsible for raising men for military service when called upon. They were the local backbone, really.
So below them, you had estate managers, stewards called mayors, foresters,
Yeah.
and then the military side with a warrior elite and even personal bodyguards, Jelicois for the chief.
And you can't forget the cultural glue. The bards, who were the poets and oral historians, the Shanakis, who were the genealogists keeping track of lineage, and pipers and harpers providing the music. The book notes pipers became particularly symbolic later, especially from the 17th century onwards.
And the base of it all was the common clansmen, farmers, laborers, craftsmen, soldiers, all bound by loyalty and the Leslie name. Crofters, cotters, different levels of tenants.
It really paints a picture of a complex, relatively self-sufficient society. Everyone had their place, bound together by loyalty, duty, and that shared Leslie identity.
And a huge part of that identity was tied to the land they held and the castles they built. The book lists this incredibly long line of chiefs, stretching over 9 centuries, starting right back with Bartolf.
It's amazing, isn't it? A real testament to their continuity. The chiefship largely stayed with the Earls of Rothes from the mid-15th century onwards, and the book traces that line right up to the present 22nd Earl, James Leslie, and the Honorable Alexander Leslie as the current chief.
Their initial lands, of course, were up in Aberdeenshire, around Garioch, Leslie. That's where the first Leslie Castle stood.
Right, but they quickly gained a really significant foothold down in Fife, in the area that was actually renamed Leslie, and then the acquisition of Ballinbrake through that key marriage we mentioned. That added a major stronghold there, Ballinbrake Castle. Leslie House was later built nearby.
They also gained lands up in Moray, again through marriage, to a Rothes heiress. That brought them Rothes Castle, and eventually the earldom title itself, even after they sold that specific piece of land. Shows how titles could stick.
And you can't forget the Balquhane branch. They held major sway back up in Aberdeenshire with their own castles, Balquhane and Fetternear Palace. Powerful branch.
And they even, for a time, held the earldom of Ross through Sir Walter Leslie, which, as the big notes, led directly to the bloody Battle of Harlaw.
Yeah, their reach just kept expanding. They acquired lands in Angus, the Mearns, Perthshire, Banffshire, and significantly established that branch over in Ireland with Castle Leslie in County Monaghan, thanks to Bishop John Leslie. It really shows their ambition and adaptability moving into new territories.
So the list of castles in the book: Leslie Castle, Balquhane, Fetternear, Rothes, Wardhill, Leslie House, Balgony, Ballinbrake, Castle Leslie in Ireland. These aren't just piles of stone, are they?
Not all. They were centers of power, administration, justice, and family life. Each one represents a chapter in the Leslie story, their physical connection to the land and their influence throughout history. Some are ruins now, some restored, some even still in family hands.
That geographical spread and power naturally led to the growth of distinct branches within the clan, which the book lays out pretty clearly. The Leslies of Rothes, as the chief's line, were obviously paramount.
Right, the main stem. But some of those cadet branches, like the Leslies of Balking we mentioned, were incredibly powerful in their own right. Sometimes they even rivaled the chiefs or acted quite independently.
And there were other significant lines, too, like Leven and Melville, Lindores, Newark.
And that Glaslaw branch in Ireland is particularly noteworthy because, remarkably, Castle Leslie remains in the family to this very day. That's incredible continuity.
The book also provides this long list of associated names, often called septs. We touched on this, but maybe clarify again, what exactly does it mean to be a sept of Clan Leslie if your surname wasn't Leslie?
Okay, yeah. The source explains it well. These were families, often with different surnames, who were historically linked to the Leslies. This link could be through blood ties, through marriage, because they lived on Leslie lands as vassals or tenants, or simply because they pledged allegiance to the Leslie chief for protection and leadership.
Okay.
So they looked to the Leslie chief as their chief, essentially, and offered loyalty in return.
Right, so names like Abernethy, which we know came in through that really important marriage that brought Ballinbrike, or others listed like Kearney, Lang, Moore, Barclay, Cruikshank, Davidson. Gosh, the list is long.
Yeah.
Grant, Innes, Irvine, Keith, Lumsden, Meldrum, Menzies, Mitchell, Ogilvie, Pringle, Ross, Seaton, Skeen, Smith, Stewart, Strichan, and Young. The book often adds a note on how they were connected, maybe tenants, craftsmen on Leslie lands, shared holdings through other marriages, political alliances, long service.
What's really significant about that extensive list, I think, isn't just remembering all the names, but what it tells us about how the clan built and projected its power. They weren't insular. They actively integrated local families, building this wider network of loyalty and support under the Leslie banner. It created a much broader identity structure than just those born with the Leslie surname.
That makes a lot of sense. A way to consolidate influence across different areas. Okay, moving from the people and places to sort of the visual identity, the symbols. The book highlights the clan crest badge first. That's the bit members wear, right?
Exactly. It shows a golden demi-griffin that's half eagle, half lion rising out of a coronet, a crown. Usually it's shown encircled by a strap and buckle bearing the motto, "Grip fast."
And the griffin means courage, vigilance.
Typically, yes, symbols of strength and watchfulness. But honestly, that motto, "Grip fast," is the absolute core of their symbolism. We heard the origin legend, but it became more than just a story. It's like an active principle representing perseverance, steadfastness, loyalty. It's not just on the crest. The book says it's still used at clan gatherings today. It's a living legacy.
The plant badge is rue, described as bluish-green. The book connects it to traditional uses in healing and protection, and symbolically to grace and resilience. An interesting choice.
And their heraldic arms, the chief's coat of arms, are particularly fascinating. They feature 3 gold buckles on a blue background, which directly reference that grip fast story, holding things together. And these are combined, quartered actually, with a red lion rampant on a gold background, crossed by a black ribbon or bend. That whole section comes from the Abernethy family through that key marriage. So the arms themselves represent that blend of Leslie loyalty and the strength brought by alliance.
And only the chief uses the full complex arms, right? Others would use variations, maybe just the crest.
That's the general rule in heraldry, yes. And musically, while tunes like Bonnie Leslie might be played at gatherings, the traditional battle cry was incredibly simple but evocative. Ballinbrake.
Ballinbrake, shouting the name of their key castle in Fife, the one acquired way back in 1316. Makes sense. Like other clans, yelling the name of a power place to rally the troops.
Precisely. It connected the warrior on the battlefield directly to home, to family, to the source of the clan's power and legacy. The book notes it's still used ceremonially sometimes, linking modern Leslies back to that history of strength. And speaking of visual identity, another really strong element is the tartan, of course. The source tells us Clan Leslie has 2 officially recognized tartans.
Okay, first is the Leslie hunting tartan. Mostly greens and blues, it says, with some black and yellow lines woven in. The book describes it as more subdued, maybe better suited for outdoors or informal daytime events like Highland Games.
Right. It was likely formalized later, probably in the Victorian era when many clan tartans were standardized. The colors are often said to connect visually to the Scottish landscape, maybe even nodding to the green of the rue plant badge.
Then there's the Leslie dress tartan. This one sounds much more striking, dominated by red, with accents of green, white, and yellow. This is the one for more formal occasions, like weddings, sealids, formal dinners.
Yeah, much brighter. The red is quite prominent. It could symbolize things like valor or maybe commemoration, remembering ancestors. Dress tartans often feature more white or brighter colors.
And both of these, the hunting and the dress, are officially recognized by the Clan Leslie Society. The book also mentions they can be woven in different color palettes, modern, ancient, or weathered. What's the difference there?
Oh, right. It's basically about the dye shades used. Modern uses bright contemporary chemical dyes. Ancient uses softer colors meant to mimic older natural vegetable dyes, so they look a bit faded. Weathered uses even more muted, earthy tones, designed to look like the tartan has been exposed to the elements for a long time. It just gives people options for personal preference while still wearing the officially recognized patterns.
Gotcha. The book does make a specific point, though, of noting there's an unofficial blue Leslie tartan floating around, but it's not recognized by the clan society.
And that's important. It highlights the significance of official recognition from the clan chief or the recognized clan society when it comes to authentic clan symbols like tartans. They're the guardians of that heritage.
Okay, now for something a bit different, but definitely part of the clan's fabric, the book includes some really fascinating supernatural tales and legends. It seems like every ancient Scottish clan has its share of ghost stories and folklore, and the Leslies are certainly no exception.
Oh, absolutely. They add such a rich, almost mystical dimension to the family history. The book shares some great ones. There's the rather touching ghost of Captain Norman Leslie at Castle Leslie over in Ireland. He died in World War I, but his mother apparently saw him appear clearly in his uniform, sitting and reading letters. Guessed that the castle still reports strange happenings, apparently.
That's not even a scary ghost story, really. It's quite poignant. Speaks to that Leslie theme of loyalty enduring, even beyond death, maybe.
Exactly. Then there's a mystical twist, sometimes added to the grip-fast origin story itself. Some versions say Bartolf actually sewed 3 silver buckles onto his strap for magical protection before the crossing. And there was apparently a belief that losing your grip in life, not just literally but metaphorically, like losing your integrity or loyalty, could bring misfortune upon you or the family.
Interesting. Wardhill Castle apparently has a green lady, but she sounds like a benevolent one seen as a guardian spirit, maybe a former nursemaid, offering comfort, particularly during times of illness.
Mm-hmm. And the book includes this strange old prophecy about the River Don running backward if 2 Leslies from specific branches married. Apparently, locals joked it actually happened during a major flood shortly after such a wedding took place. A fun piece of local folklore connecting family events to nature.
And then there's just a whole list of other intriguing tidbits mentioned. A white lady, maybe a jilted bride, at the original Leslie Castle. Red Sir Andrew, seen riding out on the moor near Balcain. A spectral monk, also at Castle Leslie.
Lady Jane Leslie, Countess of Rothes, supposedly having second sight and foreseeing a devastating fire. A gray lady appearing as an omen to the dying. Something called the Leslie Lantern, a mysterious blue light appearing before significant events.
Even the nursery rhyme, there was a crooked man, possibly being a veiled reference to General Alexander Leslie's complicated political dealings during the Civil Wars. It's a stretch, maybe, but fascinating.
In St. Lesmo, an early hermit associated with the family is said to have miraculously healed a blind girl, plus a mirror at Wardhill Castle that was reputed to sometimes show the faces of the dead.
Wow. So whether they're comforting or ominous or just plain strange, these tales are clearly woven deep into the family's lore. They reflect a belief, maybe, that forces beyond the ordinary played a role in their history, and perhaps still do. It certainly adds a unique layer.
And like pretty much all ancient clans with long histories, the Leslies were deeply involved in conflict, not just wars, but feuds. The book details several significant feuds they were part of over the centuries.
Right, like the feuds with Clan Forbes. Apparently started over a romantic dispute, of all things, but escalated into castle burnings and killings lasting over a century. There was even a saying, the book notes, love and feud make a Leslie a hot lad.
Sounds about right for the times. Then there was their major clash with Clan Donald, specifically over the powerful Earldom of Rothes. This led to the absolutely brutal Battle of Harlaw in 1411. This is where Sir Andrew Leslie of the Balcain branch tragically lost 6 of his sons in a single day. Just devastating.
They also had significant tensions with Clan Gordon in the mid-16th century. This sounds more tied up in the complex politics and religious turmoil surrounding Mary, Queen of Scots, with the Leslies generally supporting her against rebellious Gordons.
Yeah, political and religious alignments often fueled these conflicts, and much later, facing a modern, organized army, they clashed with the Hanoverian regime after the 45 Jacobite Rising. This led to the Duke of Cumberland burning Fyvie Castle again in 1746. The source really frames this as the end of the old era of traditional clan feuding for the Leslies, facing state power.
There was also a really sharp moment of political rivalry, if not direct clan warfare, with Clan Campbell. This is when Johan Leslie, the Earl of Rothes, acting as Lord High Commissioner for the King, actually presided over the trial that condemned the powerful Marquess of Argyll, the Campbell chief, to death in 1661.
Right, not a battle between clansmen, but a massive political blow delivered by a Leslie against a Campbell leader shows the depth of rivalry at the highest levels.
And a tense relationship with Clan Irvine is mentioned too, involving border disputes and skirmishes back in the 15th century. Though, interestingly, the book notes this feud was eventually smoothed over, partly through marriage, another strategic marriage.
Seems to be a recurring theme, doesn't it? But beyond these internal Scottish feuds, the Leslies were major players in wider Scottish and even European conflicts. They fought at Bannockburn, Harlaw obviously, Flodden, where 2 Earls of Rothes died on the field.
And importantly, they served abroad. This is where their international perspective really comes into play. Sir Alexander Leslie became this hugely renowned military leader, a field marshal no less, fighting for Sweden in the 30 Years' War. Fought at Breitenfeld, Wittstock. Major battles.
And then there's Colonel Walter Leslie. He became a count in the Holy Roman Empire. After being directly involved in the plot to assassinate the Imperial General Wallenstein, quite the career move.
That's 2 high-profile assassinations linked to prominent Leslies, isn't it? Walter Leslie and Wallenstein, and Norman Leslie leading the group that killed Cardinal Beaton back in Scotland earlier. Seems the grip-fast loyalty could manifest in some pretty extreme ways.
Intense times, intense actions. They also fought on different sides during the Wars of the Three Kingdoms. General David Leslie led Covenanter armies to victory at Newburn and Philiphaugh. But later, he commanded royalist forces against Cromwell and was captured after the battles of Dunbar and Worcester. Shows the shifting allegiances of the time.
And later still, back on the government side, John, the 9th Earl of Rothes, commanded troops at the Battle of Sheriffmuir during the 1715 Jacobite Rising. And General Alexander Leslie, a son of the Earl of Leven line, even commanded British forces against the Americans at the Battle of Guilford Courthouse during the American Revolution. Their military reach was huge.
Which brings us to a crucial point the book specifically addresses. Clan Leslie's position at the Battle of Culloden in 1746.
Right. Because while many Highland clans famously rose for Bonnie Prince Charlie and Jacobite cause, the source makes it very clear that the Leslie chiefship and the clan leadership largely supported the established British Hanoverian government.
Yes, the Earl of Rothes line was staunchly pro-government. Now, it's possible, even likely, that a few individual Leslies, perhaps from cadet branches like Balcaen, which had a history of independence, might have sympathized with or even joined the Jacobites. But the clan did not rise as a unified force for the rebellion.
So if there were Leslies at Culloden, they were overwhelmingly fighting for the government, likely integrated into regular British Army regiments, not fighting as a distinct Leslie clan regiment. Is that right?
That's what the source indicates, yes. And this consistent loyalty to the crown, a theme we've seen right from their origins with Bartolf, actually saved the main Leslie family from the devastating land forfeitures and repercussions that hit the rebel clans so hard after Culloden.
So their political stance had very real consequences.
Absolutely. It underscores their long-standing position as reliable supporters of the established monarchy, even as the rebellion itself and its brutal aftermath undoubtedly affected their own estates and tenants, particularly up in the Northeast where the conflict was intense.
We touched on some of the stranger tales earlier, but the book pulls together a section specifically on strange and unusual facts that really highlight some genuinely intriguing, maybe lesser-known details about the clan.
Yeah, some real gems in there. Like that potential link between General Alexander Leslie's complex political maneuvering during the Civil Wars and the Crooked Man nursery rhyme. Whether true or not, it's a unique piece of folklore connecting high politics to something so everyday.
And the fact that Walter Leslie became a collator after participating in the assassination of Wallenstein. Not exactly the usual path to nobility, is it?
Definitely not. And one story I found incredibly compelling and quite inspiring, actually, was Lucy Noel, the Countess of Rothes, surviving the Titanic disaster in 1912. She wasn't just a passive survivor. The accounts say she took charge of steering a lifeboat for hours, comforting other survivors, mainly steerage passengers. She was apparently nicknamed the Plucky Little Countess and even received an engraved lifeboat teller plaque from the crewmen afterwards. That feels very much in that grip-fast spirit of resilience and service under pressure.
That's an amazing story. Then there's the rather more lurid tale of John, Duke of Rothes, in the 17th century, supposedly dying mid-drinking party and his friends just carrying on around his corpse.
Yeah, the source presents it as a rumor, maybe exaggerated, but it certainly adds to the colorful, sometimes hard-living reputation of certain historical figures.
And bringing it right up to modern times, the fact that the actress Rose Leslie, who starred in Game of Thrones, is a descendant of the Aberdeenshire Leslie branch. And she actually married her co-star Kit Harington at her family's ancestral home, Ward Hill Castle. That's a fantastic collision of ancient Scottish heritage and global pop culture celebrity.
It really is. Then there's a mention of a 17th century Jesuit priest compiling a detailed Leslie family tree that was rumored to contain secret codes or hidden messages. Adds a little Da Vinci Code-esque mystery.
And the detail about the Leslies having several female title holders, countesses in their own right, particularly in the 18th and 19th centuries, the book notes this was quite uncommon in the Scottish peerage at the time. Another unique aspect.
Yeah, definitely ahead of the curve there. And finally, just fun details like peacocks apparently acting as sentries at Leslie House, alerting folk to visitors, and a clan member who wrote a book on Jamaican pirates.
It's these little details, isn't it? They really make the history feel less like a dry list of names and dates, and more like the story of real, sometimes eccentric people. Shows the breadth of the Leslie story.
And that breadth becomes fully apparent when you look at the Leslie diaspora, which the book covers well. Their story isn't just confined to Scotland, it's genuinely global now.
Yeah, the book traces this spread back surprisingly early. It wasn't just the Highland clearances. It started back in the 1600s with significant migration to Ulster in Northern Ireland. That's where the Castle Leslie branch got established. And also Scottish soldiers, including many Leslies, serving in European armies, Austria, Sweden, Russia. Some stayed and established families there.
Then broader emigration really picked up steam in the 18th and 19th centuries, driven by all sorts of factors: economic hardship, the agricultural revolution, changing land use, the aftermath of the Jacobite rebellions for some, and just the search for better opportunities overseas.
Many went to North America, settling in places like Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island in Canada, and across the American colonies, later the U.S., particularly the South. Australia and New Zealand also became major destinations.
And these emigrants, they contributed significantly to building these new societies, often in frontier conditions, while also trying, sometimes against the odds, to preserve their Scottish heritage and identity.
The book even notes the name appearing in African-American communities, sometimes stemming from the tragic history of slavery, where enslaved people adopted or were given the surnames of Scottish owners, and also presence in the Caribbean, like Jamaica.
So today, the name Leslie and people identifying with Clan Leslie heritage can be found literally all over the world, supported by active Clan Leslie societies that work hard to connect descendants, share history, and promote research.
Right, like the Clan Leslie Society International and the Clan Leslie Trust based back in Scotland. They play a really vital role, don't they, in keeping that history and those connections alive for people who might be many generations removed from Scotland but still feel that link to the clan.
Absolutely. They're crucial for maintaining that sense of global community.
Wow. Okay, what a journey that was. Through the incredibly rich history and legacy of Clan Leslie. I mean, from those almost mythical Hungarian origins and that pivotal grip-fast rescue, through centuries of rising influence in Scotland, clever strategic alliances, fierce feuds, distinguished service on battlefields across both Scotland and Europe, layers of fascinating folklore and strange tales, and ultimately spreading right across the globe.
Yeah, we've covered a lot. We've seen how they built their internal structure, established their key lands and castles, expanded through powerful branches and integrated associated names, and how they represented their identity through powerful symbols like the crest, the motto, and their distinct tartans. It really is a story of remarkable adaptability, unwavering loyalty, that grip-fast idea again, and enduring resilience across, 9 centuries. It's quite incredible when you think about it.
It really is. And all this fantastic detail, these stories and insights we've been discussing, they come directly from our source for this deep dive, the book Clan Leslie. It's the 5th book in the Ancient Clans of Scotland series, meticulously compiled by BagtownClans.com and published by Rigby Publishing.
And it really is a truly comprehensive and engaging resource. I'd say it's perfect for anyone interested in Scottish history generally, or perhaps if you're tracing your own Leslie roots, or honestly, just if you're looking for a captivating story about one family's epic journey through time.
Absolutely. And, if you're thinking about a gift for someone, maybe that history buff in your life or someone has Scottish heritage, or perhaps even just that person who's always impossible to buy for this book, Clan Leslie, or others in the series, could be really perfect. It's kind of a gift of heritage, history, and some genuinely surprising facts packed in there. It really is a great find. And you can find Clan Leslie from the Ancient Clans of Scotland series, available for purchase right now on Amazon. We've put a direct link in the description for this deep dive to make it super easy for you to check it out and maybe explore this amazing clan story even further yourself.
That's right. Just check out the description right below wherever you're listening. Okay, so to leave you with a final thought from this deep dive into Clan Leslie, considering their famous motto, grip fast, their origins as relative newcomers to Scotland, their long history of adapting to change, surviving conflict, and spreading across the world. What does it mean for you today, wherever you might be, to grip fast to your own heritage, maybe your values or your community, even as the world keeps changing so rapidly around us?
Something to reflect on, definitely. Well, thanks everyone for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening. Until next time.